Okay, here we go. Chapter 3, lecture notes, turn the screw. Okay, so what we see right away after seeing Miles, the governess has really strange, in my opinion, very glorifying, emphatic way of describing him. She says, I had seen him on the instant without and within in the great glow of freshness, the same positive fragrance of purity which I had from the moment seen his little sister. He was incredibly beautiful. Miss Gross had put her finger on it. Everything but a sort of passion of tenderness for him was swept away by his presence. Talks about something divine that I've never found to the same degree in any child. His indescribable little air of knowing nothing in the world but love. She praises Miles to an extreme degree, where, in my opinion at least, it brings that ambiguity about the governess and what the governess's relationship is with these children. How close is she? Is she too close? We know that Miss Jessel and Peter Quint are going to have had that connection, but here we're going to see that that the governess also, in an ambiguous way, may have had a relationship a little bit too close. Going past her usual ambiguity, she says that she was being incisive when she talks about saying nothing to anybody regarding the fact that he got kicked out of school, though in many ways that is also just being ambiguous and not actually taking an action, since she is going to have to take care of him at home. But he's school age, so he should be at school. Miss Gross agrees with it, says, I'll stand by you, we'll see it out. She says, we'll see it out. She ardently echoed, so very passionately she kind of does this. Gives Miss Gross her hand. Miss Gross has kind of an odd moment where she says, would you mind, miss, if I use the freedom? The governess says, to kiss me? No. And then they embrace like sisters. So a really kind of drastic sign of affection that all of a sudden appears, going along with the idea that the governess feels very moved towards Miss Gross, and is definitely expressing that. Though we always have to remember that this is the governess's description of things, the governess telling us the story. This isn't Miss Gross telling us this. Okay. She feels like she's under a charm. She says, I was lifted aloft on a great wave of infatuation and pity. So he was infatuated with Miles. I found it simple in my ignorance, my confusion, perhaps my conceit, to assume that I could deal with a boy whose education for the world was all on the point of beginning. She's describing, of course, the fact that she is not really suitable to teach Miles, to give him the kind of education that he needs. Okay. She has space and air and freedom. Nice little polysyntheton right there, structurally. All the music of summer and all the mystery of nature. You know, all of this beauty that she's surrounded by. She's just kind of swept off her feet. A nice little anaplosis. And then there was consideration, and consideration was sweet. Notice that the ending with consideration, beginning with consideration afterwards. Henry James is really starting to use some of his language devices as he kind of builds up with this. The governess describes all of this as a trap. And from this dreamlike state, there is a change. And as she says, the change was actually like the spring of a beast. But notice the ups and downs. Everything's peaceful, everything is wonderful, everything is, fresh and pure and innocent, and then the change happens. She goes into a discussion about how she likes to daydream about the fact that she is giving pleasure, if you ever thought of it, to the person whose pressure had responded to the gentleman, that what she is doing is pleasing him, making him happy, that she's doing all this for her ardent love that she feels to him. And that's definitely coming across here. She's, thinking about him, daydreaming about him, very much infatuated with the gentleman. Okay. As you go a little further along, she thinks about the daydream about how she would feel justified if she could just see the gentleman look at her with that light in his handsome face, that gratified light. That's all she would need. Then she's a little shocked because she looks up at the tower and believes that she sees the gentleman, but it is not what she thinks. She says, "It produced in me this figure in the clear twilight. I remember 2 distinct gasps of emotion, which were, sharply, the shock of my first and that of my second surprise." Notice how disjointed this line is to kind of show the fragmentary element of it. The jutting. "It produced in me, comma, this figure, comma, in the clear twilight, comma, I remember, comma, 2 distinct gasps of emotion, comma, which were, comma, sharply, comma, the shock of my first and that of my second surprise." Maybe a little bit over the top when I just said that, but look at all that broken up pieces of text. And it mimics her reaction. It mimics her pausing, the kind of shock, the broken up hesitation here. She says, "My second was a violent perception of the mistake of my first. The man who met my eyes was not the person I had precipitately supposed. There came me thus a bewilderment, a vision of which, after these years, there is no living view that I can hope to give. An unknown man in a lonely place is a permitted object of fear to a young woman privately bred, and the figure that faced me was, a few more seconds assured me, as little anyone else I knew as it was the image that had been in my mind." She realizes she has no idea who this is. She intensely envisions who this man was. And rightly she says, a random man in a place like this, stranger danger. She should be scared, as should pretty much anybody. When you're in a place that you should feel comfortable and look up and see someone inside your house that should not be there. Okay. They have a very intense staring contest that follows. It says, "We were confronted across our distance quite long enough for me to ask myself with intensity who then he was, and to feel, as an effect of my inability to say, a wonder that in a few instants more became intense." He seems to be fairly comfortable. He's not wearing a hat, which of course would be very Victorian. This idea of gentlemen wearing a hat, and when they are not, shows that they are in a familiar place, their home, something along those lines. Okay. As she stands there kind of shocked, he begins to walk away. I had the sharpest sense that during this transit he never took his eyes from me, and I see at this moment the way his hand, as he went, passed from one of the crenellations to the next. He stopped at the other corner, but less long, even as he turned away, still markedly fixed me. He turned away. That was all I knew. A very brusque and final line here. And what I would think about with this is, here we have Peter Quint, the ghost, looking down at her, and she sees it with so much detail. And remember, there's going to be this suspicion that this is all in the governor's mind. That is one of the ambiguous qualities of this. Is this actually happening, or is this all just a delusion? There are lots of signs that maybe it is a delusion, but at the same time, we need to question it. We can't really trust the governess. We don't know if the governess is shady herself, whether she's telling this in a painting herself the victim way. So this is just an odd moment to me, that she so descriptively understands and sees everything that Peter Quinn is doing. And like I said, the final moment, Henry James masterfully closes it. He turned away. That was all I knew. Sharp, brusque, final. Okay. We'll continue with chapter 4.